This is a Larry Fedoruk podcast. News Talk 610 CKTB.
There are two stories at least to tell here. One is the story that's in the book I am holding. It's called The Baptist. But there's also the story of how this all got done. That's also interesting. Hopefully we can talk about it all. The author writes under the name Ryan David Gerard. He is a self-published author of this book, The Baptist. Ryan Gerard joining us now. Hello, Ryan.
Hi, Larry. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Thanks
for having me on the show.
Well, thanks for coming on. I want to get to the book and the story of the Baptist here as much as we can. But first of all, I want to ask, what's the first time you sort of realized, hey, I got a story, I think I got a book in me?
Well, you know what? I've always been sort of a writer of sorts. I mean, I used to write these little cheesy amateur scripts with my buddies in high school. And this was actually an idea I had when I was about 18. And the original concept, like I was supposed to be this movie director by now, but, you know, life happens and things like that. So, but the idea is still stuck, and it was much more feasible as I became an adult to write it as a book instead of a script. So that's what I did. Right,
and then somebody can make a movie out of it with you eventually, maybe. How's that?
Well, hopefully, we'll see.
Yeah, but I mean, so you just talked about a lot of people who have that idea or have something, and then nothing ever comes of it. I'm holding a big novel right here. I mean, what kept you going to actually write the book?
Really just to see it done. I mean, the idea has been in my head, like I said, for such a long time that just getting it out and on paper and finished was what I wanted to do. I actually wrote, it's a trilogy, this whole series. But I wrote the original manuscript for this thing was actually this giant, almost like a Stephen King novel. But it's really thick, and so it was all three parts was finished in the original manuscript. Right. But I got some advice from a few people and thought about it some more, and I've since split it into three parts.
Now, it's very hard to get it done, yeah. But it's very hard out there to get it done through an established publisher, isn't it?
It is. It's very difficult, as I'm finding.
So, and I've been that route myself, and it's really difficult. People, they want you to be a successful author, but you need their help to do so. Catch-22 goes on, you know, it's really...
Exactly.
So you're self-published?
Yeah. I rented this book from the library. The public library had it. It's called the Writer's Marketplace. You're probably familiar with that book. It's a big, giant, dictionary-sized textbook that it's full of literary agents and publishers. I spent a good few weeks and months going through that and writing down the ones that you really have to kind of target your audience. Mm-hmm. So some publishers target young people, some publishers target things like horror or paranormal. So you really have to just kind of go through their list and find which ones that fit your book.
Sure.
And once I compiled a list of about 100 of those, and then I started going down the list one by one, sending them what's called a query letter. And, you know, and that in itself is a very meticulous process that you have to figure out.
Yeah, just to wait for the rejection slip. But I don't mean to say that, you know, that you should be, but that's what happens to every writer. The rejection slips, they pile it up. And they always tell that story when they become rich and famous. Now, let's before we run out of time, let's talk about The Baptist itself, the book set, as you say, in the not-too-distant future?
Yeah, so it's set, it jumps around a little bit. That tells the story, but present day, if you want to call it that, in the story it's around 2040. So yeah, it's not too distant future, and the world is kind of like you were mentioning that it was kind of apocalyptic, kind of not. I mean, the series itself, by part 3, it does become apocalyptic, but yeah, the book 1 starts. The world is on the brink of another world war.
Okay,
and they've seen the worst terrorist group that they've ever seen, and the world it's just about to be pushed over the knife's edge into a third world war as the book starts in the present day.
So, and by 2041, so there'd still be parts of the world that readers today would recognize. In other words, it's not so far in the future; it's not even a world we recognize. The world's kind of going to look probably a lot like it looks today, except for the disasters that have befallen it.
Exactly. And the catch in the book, where the twist is that there's two main characters. So one of the main characters is, like, the protagonist is a police officer in Baltimore, and the other supporting role is a scientist who's on the verge of inventing time travel.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So that element comes in.
Yep.
Now, this is the line I read in a synopsis from your website, I think it is the idea of time being a line, like a rope. It's in a parallel lines stretched out?
Yep. So basically, if time was a rope, and if you think of Earth's timeline as a straight line, the theory is that if you ever flicked a skipping rope when you were a kid, and it waves down to the other end, and if all the events of history were kind of sitting on that timeline and then they were flung up into space, and then by the time they landed again on the timeline, they wouldn't be in the same order. And that plot point kind of ties into what happens in part 2, without giving too much away. Like the series as a whole, you were saying earlier on the show that that's an element of the book, but that's more of a grander element of the entire series itself.
Okay.
Book 1 is more of just it's the intro, so it introduces the characters, what's happening, what they're doing, and all that.
Now, can you tell me, would it ruin anything, does this Baltimore cop, it's on the verge of inventing time travel, does he get to it in this book? Does he get to time travel a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. He
does, without giving too much away. And there's a twist at the end that I can't really speak much about it without giving too much away to readers, but yeah, he does not through to the end, but it ends with a cliffhanger sort of ending in that sense.
So there's a lot, and I've noticed this with books I've read that may involve time travel or this kind of thing. There's a lot to keep track of for you as a writer. How do you keep track of all this to make sure it makes sense by the end of the first book?
Well, I've read it about 200 times myself, just to make sure everything made sense. And I've had other people read it and kind of judge continuity and things like that and tell me, hey, this doesn't fit, or things like that. This character, he was doing this before. Why isn't he doing this now? Kind of thing.
Right.
I had a little memo book that I carried around with me that I would keep notes on, and I made a chart for myself. I had the characters in the middle, I had the plot points surrounding them, and it was just a lot of scribbles and notes jotted down. But don't ask me how it made sense. It just kind of did by the end.
Yeah, but that's part of the writer's process. Is you have to remember. Oh, he just came through the door, so this has got that kind of thing. Whatever. Wow. Yeah. All right. As far as self-publishing, you obviously used friends and yourself as an editor to get a manuscript ready.
Yep.
And then, because you got some great artwork here. This is a pro-looking book. That must have cost a bit.
A little bit, yeah. You're a little bit out of pocket at first, but they say you got to spend money to make money, right? So
sure. And
that photo was actually taken by my sister, actually.
Oh, is that right?
That's me on the cover. That picture on the cover is me.
So, and the guy on the website, that's the Baptist. That's you also, I guess.
That's me. Yeah,
yeah, it looks like it. Okay, now that I'm looking at it, all right. Wow, good photo. What did you use for blood there?
It's actually. I think it's just a combination of like corn syrup and food coloring. It's actually done by a friend of my sister's who was in the movie business doing makeup and things.
Right.
So she set me up with her, and we got that done.
No, it looks top notch. Sorry, I didn't mean to spoil the illusion of the blood there, but just wanted to make sure that. Now, have you been promoting the book? Have you gone to signings and things like that as well?
Yes, I had one about 2 weeks ago in the city of Uxbridge at a little local bookstore that I had the book on consignment on their shelves. And I have another one coming up this Saturday for Toronto residents and anybody in the GTA. It's going to be in Whitby at a local pub called the Tap and Tankard. And that's at 6 o'clock. It's just more of a celebration party of the book's launch, so you can come and grab a drink, get some foods. I'll be there with a table of books, and I'll sign them, and you can purchase the book there.
Have you thought about coming? I was going to say, have you thought about coming out to Niagara at some point down the road, if you can?
We looked into it. We looked into doing a launch in Niagara. Unfortunately, the timing and that didn't work out, but we're going to try again.
Good.
So we will hopefully be in the Niagara region in the near future.
No, that sounds great. Now, again, tell me about Saturday. It's Whitby. So, but I think we have some listeners out in that area. You said Whitby, 6 o'clock Saturday. Where again?
At a local pub. It's called the Tap and Tankard. It's right off the 401 on Brock Street. The address, I think, is 224 Brock Street South. All
right. Thank you. That's great. It's great to know, Ryan. Now, tell me that it's been out there a little bit and you've sold a few. What is the feedback on the characters, the story?
So far, I've had a positive feedback. I've had a couple of negative criticisms, which is fine. You need to be able to take it as a writer. But, for the most part, I've had a couple of people tell me they can't put it down. They're losing sleep at night because they read before bed, and then they're Their mind is just trying to figure everything out, so they're sitting in bed thinking about my book, and in a good way that they can't sleep. So I'm kind of like, oh, sorry about that, but it's good to hear as a writer that people are enjoying it. So yeah. I'm happy about that.
Now, you said you finished the whole thing, so parts 2 and 3 are done. At least the story's done.
Yes.
Are you actually working on bringing out that book, or are you kind of waiting to see how this does?
I'm planning to bring out both parts 2 and 3 very soon. I'm hoping maybe for a fall release of part 2, right. And then maybe late winter or early spring for part 3. Yeah, they're finished. I'm just waiting to be kind of tweaked and edited a little bit before they're actually printed. But
now, what about your website? It's called BaptistBookProject.com, right?
Yes.
Can people get the book on that website?
They can't order it through the website itself, but there's a link to the Amazon page.
And there you go.
That they can click on the Amazon page, and it'll take you right to the book's page, and you can order it right off of Amazon.
Sounds perfect. Ryan, thank you so much. All the best. We'll keep in touch on this book.
Yes. Thank you very much for having me on the show, Larry.
You bet. Ryan David Gerard is the author's name, Ryan Gerard. The novel is called The Baptist, and kind of an interesting story about, when you have the story in you and you continue and you write it and then you get it published, you publish it yourself and you promote it yourself. And plus, it's a good story. It's called The Baptist.